Welcome to the Vernon Sports Show. I'm your host, Jacob Vernon, joined by my guy G-Sportz. G, good morning, good afternoon, whatever you want to call it. How you feeling, man?
Feeling good, man. Ready to get to Memorial Day weekend, man, so I can have an extended break.
Extended break, what you put on the grill?
Some salmon, little tuna steak,
Okay,
little grill
okay.
wrap shrimp, you know,
Chef G in the chat, man. We're gonna have to see some of that, bro. We're gonna have to
some
see
char
some of it, taste some of it, not yours.
some charball oysters.
I heard that's your specialty, bro. Heard that's your specialty. How you ain't gonna say the secrets or nothing, but I'm
Is
I'm gonna have to
it,
tap.
it's all about that sauce, you know. Sauce is the key. If your sauce on point, the moisture's gonna hit. You know what I'm saying? So it's all about the sauce for anybody that's watching, man. Make sure you get your nice little recipe with that sauce. Make sure it's seasoned, not overly seasoned, not too bland, like right in the middle. And I promise you, man, you're gonna have people wanting them every time they see you. They're gonna be asking you, man, when you gonna get on the grill with the oysters? I stay getting requests,
Right up.
man.
That's gonna be your mark.
I'm always getting a
Today we're gonna
request.
be breaking down NILSU, maybe who's got a thermostat getting a little warm in college football? Who's got the biggest pressures? What coaches are going to have to perform here, or the Wolves are going to start getting a little upsetting? Speaking of Wolves, we'll talk about NBA playoffs. And we might have a special topic at the end of the stream. We're just going to have to see how it lays out. This NILSU thing, G, kind of just my first initial takeaway is I feel like when this broke out onto the scene in college sports, LSU was one of the biggest brands to be able to take it and run with it and develop stars in just really any walk of life, not just football, which a lot of people would have expected be the lead horse. I mean, we had women's basketball, we had baseball, you had some track and field athletes as well. I guess what I'm kind of wondering is two things. One, how are you going to be able to replace the generation of stars that is no longer here? Your Angel Reese's, your Paul Skeens, Jaden Daniels, Libby Dunn. I'm sure Flaucher's got one left, and then she'll join that list as well as they all go pro. I feel like it's easy to build a brand here at LSU. You got the primetime spotlight, you got the SEC focus, you've got all of those things playing into your favor. But G, I think what's going to help them as well is just the amount of resources they're allocating toward it. The fact you got a whole team that's going to be tapped in on it, a whole department, if you will, ready to give you the resources to grow your brand, your socials, your podcast, whatever the case may be. And I want to kind of pick your brain and ask you, how much of a recruiting advantage do you think that that is now that LSU not only can theoretically compete with some of the biggest offers, biggest checks, biggest universities, but now they're also showing that they're committed and focused on helping you grow your brand as well as the individual and sort of detach yourself from LSU. I feel like that is something you could potentially leverage a little bit to get some kids interested in the three letters.
Yeah, before NIL started, that's what LSU was capitalizing on when you were talking about recruiting, especially on the football side. You knew that on Saturdays they were gonna get the primetime TV spot. You knew that they were gonna be playing against some of the toughest competition in the country. You knew that the Kurt Hurd streaks of the world was gonna always talk really, really good about the LSU players, the Mel Kipers, the people that's somebody that's talking about college football, right? And all that did is just build LSU's brand, especially on the football side. And I think that that's how they was getting a lot of recruits with the Jamal Chases, the Justin Jeffersons of the world. The these top recruits knew if you can't play for that purple and gold, that your brand was going to be extended beyond your years. And I think that add the NIL portion to it, um, has kind of, I don't want to say diminished how big LSU brand is, but I think it's not as big in the kid's mind as it once was, because the first thing they want to know is what, how much you gonna pay me. All right. The brand part is the secondary thing they're asking. All right. And so that you seen Brian Kelly um make an effort to make sure that they get the NIL portion right, because if they do, which it look like they have by the portal class they just brought in, right, the number one portal class in the country, you add that along to how they're able to brand their top athletes, you got a recipe of success. And I think that if they can keep it going, and time will tell, because if they don't win with all the money they spent on this portal, will these businesses will these boosters continue to pour in to the collective for LSU and keep this NIL thing going? That's going to be the key. So I think this is a very important year for Brian Keller to have success. And I'm not saying he got to win a natty, but they got to make a run. They got to for sure make the 12-team playoff, and they got to make at least make a run, man. Make it interesting to make these people, these businesses, the Tigers of the world, say I'm going to keep on throwing some money that way so we can keep getting some of the best players in the country. You do that, adding on to how you can brand these athletes. There's no reason in the world LSU can't be one of the best programs in the country. And then when you talk about women's college basketball at LSU, you talk about baseball, you talk about gymnastics. All right, I think boys basketball has a ways to go. I think McMahon is on the hot seat. They're gonna have to get somebody in there that understands that uh how to build a program when you're in a hotbed of football, right? I'm hoping that McMahon figures it out, but if he doesn't, they're gonna have to get a coach in there that understands that, and it could be done at LSU, bro. It could
Oh
be
yeah,
done. They have other schools in the country, like a Michigan, who was a football led school, but the basketball program still is really really good. All right, and so they just gotta figure a way to do that. If you can do that, man, if you got all those sports hitting on all cylinders, what school in the country could compete with that?
I agree.
I'll
And
wait.
going back to your point, talking about being able to balance everything, being able to try to navigate the basketball success while also having the lion's share of your attention go towards football. You got all them scholarships, all that funding, all that attention. And I kind of think of someone like maybe a Tennessee. They were able to kind of fire their baseball program, their basketball program. However, it's not at that championship level in terms of every single program winning it. And I agree. I think LSU could really get to that point because it is a culmination of things. It's the hotbed of talent. It's the ability to be able to recruit and retain. It's the ability to be able to win and actually show the Todd Graves, the Gordon McKernans, all these great boosters. Yeah, it's all your money's worth it. It's actually getting some value behind it, using the resources properly. But just going back to the point that they've got a whole department getting thrown into it. You got 40, maybe 50 employees here, all tapped in, all giving you resources. It's one of the more interesting pieces that they've added this offseason, and I think could potentially make a little bit of difference here as we're talking recruiting. And every single increment that you can get better, I think counts here. So it's a
Yeah,
game. Let's
for sure.
move into the top 5 teams we're expecting pressure. And I feel like this is a good segue. We're talking about having to perform, expectations, all this. I'm gonna start off with a team in the SEC, one that we're familiar with, Ole Miss. I think that Lane Kiffin is one of those interesting coaches that gets talked about a lot. You always hear his name pop up, whether there be a coaching carousel, a new opportunity. He's been one of the biggest brands, I guess, because he's really one of the most vocal people in college, whether it be on Twitter or on his podcast that he appears on and whatnot. He's always got something to say, and I feel like last year is probably his biggest soapbox he had yet. They didn't go to the college football playoff, and naturally, you lose Jackson Dart, Trey Harris, yada yada yada. You're gonna have to hit that portal, hit it hard. They pulled in, I think, 29 players. Which hats off to them because most people are pulling in like 18 to 20 in that top 5 ranks. They have the number 4 portal class. And I feel like the extra 9 to 10 pieces, it can go one of two ways, right? The portal ain't always easy, G. Sometimes it's a coin flip. We've seen that a lot across college football. It's not guaranteeing you success, especially when you're replacing that many people. They're replacing a quarterback, a wide receiver, several key defenders. And I think they're kind of in that limbo period where this season is the big test for Lane Kiffin, the culture, the scheme, all these things that we've been attributing to Ole Miss's success or, them growing into this successful contender light, you really gonna have to see it get put in action. You're gonna see LSU come into your city. You're gonna have to go on the road to UGA and try to beat them 2 years in a row and show that you're actually a top dog in the SEC. And it wasn't just a fluke last year. There's a lot of things that I think they can potentially be a little over pressured on. And I feel like the fact that they don't have Jackson Dart, the fact that they have to answer all of those choices, they're relying heavily on the transfer portal. It's going to be really good or really bad. And I don't know what side of the fence I'm gonna stand on for here, but that's one of the teams I think potentially could be feeling the heat a little bit. G.
I gotta respectfully disagree with you on that. Man, Lane Kiffin is one of the best things that ever happened to Ole Miss. All right.
He is.
This program really should have been in a 12-team playoff last year. I feel like they got snubbed. I think the committee got it wrong. What Lane Kiffin has done since he's been there, all he has done is won. All he do is win, 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 win. He get the top players in the country. This past year's draft, he had five players go in the top 4 rounds of the draft. Like, Ole Miss is not used to producing that quality of talent year in and year out since like when Lane Kiffin has been there. They would be a fool to even think about letting Lane Kiffin go. I don't care if Lane Kiffin go 5-5, 6-4, 7-3, 7-4. You got to retain Lane Kiffin. You got to. All right. They lucky he didn't leave Ole Miss this year and take another job. All right. It's only a matter of time for a big time university like a Texas A&M, a school like that, pop open, and Lane Kiffin gonna be one of the first names that come up on as a candidate.
Right.
So, uh,
That's what I'm thinking, because I feel like I guess what I'm worried about really is if the Rebels come out and have another season, don't go. Do you think he kind of feels like it might be too small of a pond for him and he should just spread his wings and fly? Do you think that's a legitimate possibility here? Like that Lane Kiffin thinks he not necessarily he's better than that or the system or whatever the case may be, but do you think that it gets to a point where if a better opportunity arises, he might be like, I might have to take this?
it just depends. Me personally, when it comes to what he has done at Ole Miss, I think that for him to take another job, it'll have to be a offer that he can't refuse. They would have to throw a astronomical amount of money at him that makes him feel like, all right, I just can't turn this down. That's too many zeros. You know what I
Godfather
mean?
offer. Yo.
You know what I mean? Because you can't say that if he leave and go here, he gonna better get better recruits because we not living them time. We not living in them kind of times no more. We living in the
Right.
times of NIL. So as long as Ole Miss is producing NIL to the fashion that he wants, there's no reason for him to leave Ole Miss. Nah, if you want to leave to go to a conference where you feel like you got a better chance of winning a conference, you got a better chance of putting yourself in a situation to get in the 12-team playoff easily, then that'll make more sense. Like the ACC, like the Pac-12, if you like the Big 12, if he does something like that, that would be the only reason he would leave Ole Miss, in my opinion. He won't be leaving for better facilities. Ole Miss or facilities are getting better and better every year. I think they just put like $10 million into the facilities. Well, I think a year or two ago. So, uh, and he's winning, bro. He's winning. He's winning. If he don't lose to LSU last year with the Kyron Lacy walk off touchdown, don't play. Ole Miss for sure in the 12-team playoff.
No,
So
that's true.
I don't think the athletic directors and the administration at Ole Miss are even thinking about having Lane Kiffin on a hot seat this year. I don't care what his record is. He would have to do something like get a charge, you know, and be involved with something with the law for them to even think about letting him go.
I'm gonna move over to a team that might hit a little close to home for some people, but look, we got to talk about it. It's one of those situations here. LSU. I think LSU's got 10 wins. I know everybody's saying it's great and it's not celebrating, gets you fired, all these different things. You're hearing all kind of narratives. Will Campbell's talking about this last year, but like I think 10 wins in this instance could potentially get you in the playoffs. It's only 2 losses. Here's where the worry really starts. It ain't about the fact that they've hit the 10-win mark, this, that, the other. It's the first 6 weeks, G. I think a lot of people, myself included, I'm not even going to put a generality out there and say a lot of people, all this stuff. No, me. I have overlooked the first 6 weeks of LSU schedule. I haven't really taken into account how tough that's really going to be, especially with the fact that you don't get that much time to figure out your offensive line, new DBs, new defensive line, yada, yada, yada. Gee, you're going to start it off with Clemson. Number one returning production. We're going to break down all these games, so everybody stay tuned with us. But I'm just saying that game going to be a lot harder than a lot of people are expecting. You get a little break with LA Tech. Florida comes in. You know that's going to be one of the toughest games. I'm going to agree with you. They're going to have a lot of stuff to prove. By the way, beat you last year. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility once again. Southeastern, another one of those breaks. But then, boom, on the road in Oxford, Ole Miss. Then you get South Carolina at home. Gee, that's a real possibility of dropping 2 in the first 6. I'm not saying it's going to happen, and I'm not trying to be the bearer of bad news, but if you don't lock in and take care at the beginning, it could be over with before it really even started. And LSU's been more of a team that's reactive, honestly, in the last few years. They've been a team that has taken a little while to kind of get things going and get that win streak together. You can't be a slow starter anymore. You need to be lights out week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no matter who you're playing, because the SEC gauntlet, it didn't take much time to arrive for the Tigers. In recent memory, the first 5 weeks, especially last season, in my opinion, it was one of those ones I was like, all right, I could see them going 5-0. This one, G, I can see a 4-2 start. It's one of those ones that's worrying me. And I think this is where the pressure's starting because they don't have time to figure it out, quite frankly. They got the number 1 portal class. They got really everything on their side. And now they're going to have to respond. And I think it might be mounting here.
I tell you what, old Saint Nick is paying attention to what's going on in Baton Rouge. He looking, he keeping tabs. I can promise you. I done said this before, and I'm on record saying it again. If this don't work out this season for Brian Kelly and Scott Woodward decides to buy him out and give him his walking papers, I would not be surprised if Nick Saban has the urge to come back to college football, especially back to a program that he built. Let's be honest. Before Nick Saban, LSU wasn't known as the LSU we know to the day.
Mm-mm.
Nobody was thinking about LSU when they had Jared Donato. All the top recruits was going out the country. The Reggie Wings, the Cordell Stewarts, the Peyton Mannings, the Eli Mannings. I could go on and on. Marshall Falk. I could take this back 20 years. Nick Saban built LSU to where it's at today. And I think if Scott Woodward is the AD that I think he is, which I think he's a really good one, he's having conversations with Nick Saban. They going out to dinner. They going take a ride on his PG, drinking a little Pinot Noir, talking about what if Brian Kelly can't get it done this year. Nick, would you come on down to Baton Rouge? Would you come on back home? You're always putting it out there on social media and in the public day how much you love it and you miss it, and that's one of your biggest regrets. I'm just saying. So I think that's somebody that's paying real close attention to what's going to happen down there in Baton Rouge this year. And it's a lot of pressure on Brian Kelly. I think he knows it. I think that staff knows it. And I'm going to tell you, they have all the tools on that roster to change this narrative that we're talking about right now. There's no reason in the world why they can't get it done and getting that to that 12-team playoff and make a run in the playoff. There's no reason in the world. You got arguably the best quarterback in the country coming back. With the most production. You got a defense that is probably on paper, they top 5 in the country in my mind. Receiving coach. Like that. They're gonna put on the shoe. You got one of the best returning. You got one of the best returning running backs in the country, and Caden Durham. All right, so I can't wait to see how it's gonna play out. That week 1 against Clemson gonna tell us a lot. So it's gonna be interesting.
And G, I'm gonna even go on record as well and say that if they lose that week 1 against Clemson, that not only does this pressure mount quickly, but the decision could come a lot earlier. If you got 2 losses, if you're really questioning if a playoff is a realistic possibility, you could see something similar to what happened in 2021. Will be very interesting to see though. Hey, I ain't hoping for it. I'd rather be sitting there dancing in a 12-man, going on vacation. But look, whatever happens, happens.
I rock with BK. I rock with BK, man. I'm rooting for him.
I feel like what he's done with what he had, I'm impressed with so far. But like you said, it's right now it's time to produce some results. I do think that they have an opportunity to be able to do it. But man, in first 6 weeks, you gonna get tested. If they can make it through that, you can damn near make it through anything. Because the back half of the schedule, I feel like, is your lighter half, quite frankly. Because especially with the point that you're gonna arrive at, and then games like Alabama, you ain't really circling them as much as you were back then. I'm just saying that's me. The toughest games are going to be the ones we had just mentioned. Let's talk about Oklahoma real quick. That's a team that I'm gonna add some pressure to. Coach Venables, he looking to prove that worth after that extension. G contract signed. Says he's the head coach until 2029. That's to be determined, obviously. $51.6 million worth of a contract, $8.5 million a year. Puts him right around like ninth in the SEC in terms of being paid. But that team ain't finishing in ninth in conference standings with their league record. The last year, they went 2-6 in their conference. Not great. Yeah, it's their SEC debut, G. But another team that was in that expansion seemed to be able to play just fine whenever they jumped into that water. Went to a conference championship. It didn't have any growing pains. So it's a really tough comparison. Polar opposites, quite frankly. And I feel like he can't have another year under 500. It went 6-7 in totality, not just a 2-6 in the SEC. He's gonna have to turn that around quick. They got the number 10 rank in returning production, number 12 portal class, and they got John Mateer. We already told you about him in the last couple of weeks. One more statistic just to kind of boost his stock a little bit. Last season, he was tied with Garrett Nussmeier and Jackson Dart for passing touchdowns. He could potentially be that piece that the Sooners need, but like I said, G, 6-7 is abysmal. Yeah, it's your first time in the SEC. Yeah, 6 of those losses came to really good teams, but I mean, how much longer do you get to prove that if you're getting paid this much, top 10 in the SEC, and you're finishing bottom of the barrel? Something got to change.
Brett Venables definitely has a lot of pressure on him this year. This is gonna be one of those seasons where I feel like if he doesn't have it figured out and the administration don't see some progression in the first 5-6 weeks of the season, I think this could be a program where you say they let their head coach go in the middle of the season. I really believe that. Everybody's not cut out to be a head coach, bro. I know some damn good coaches that were great coordinators, but they weren't good head coaches. You know, the Rob Ryans of the world, the Rex Ryans of the world. Um, there's a lot of different coordinators that try to go be head coaches. It just never it never goes the way people think it's going to go. And I think Brent Venables I've been around him. I've had the opportunity of having conversations with him when he was at Clemson. Very, very bright guy, very likable guy, passionate about the game of football. But I think sometimes when you are the head honcho and you gotta make all the decisions when you're talking about a whole football team plus your staff, it just brings a lot of different dynamics into play. And I think he's really good at being on the defensive side of the ball, making that unit gel as one, getting the right type of players on that side of the ball, versus having to be responsible for a whole program. Does that mean he's a bad coach? No, it don't. It just means everybody not suited to be a head coach in college football. And look, I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope he does well this year. But I think the writing on the wall when you look at Grant Venables and you say to yourself, who he's been a coordinator for, I think, 28 years, and he finally decided to go be a head coach. I think we're seeing why.
And another thing I think is adding the pressure to G is the fact that they kind of rushed to the extension, if you ask me. And we talked about this last year. We really had a topic on this show saying you probably should have saw him in the SEC in his first year before you went out and paid him back to Brinks truck up the whole 9 yards. I feel like that's gonna come back to kind of haunt him a little bit. Move on to another one. I'm gonna say USC. I know this one might throw off a lot of people, but look, if you're gonna add LSU to the list, you gotta add Lincoln Riley. They both arrived in the same year, 2021. He's kind of underachieving. Yeah, he's got the same type of excuse, if you will, as Venables. They're in the Big Ten now. You're a little fish in a big pond, so to speak. But look, Lincoln at Oklahoma, fantastic, G. 85% win rate. 4 out of his 5 years, they won a conference title. 3 out of 5 years are in the college football playoff. Produced buku talent. And then you come to Southern Cal, and it's kind of taking a while. You even bring Caleb Williams over with you, and it still don't happen. I feel like a lot of people were expecting a lot more. They haven't gotten it. And now look, last season you got LSU. You finished the year with A&M, but your record's 7-6. That 500 little floating around mark, that ain't pretty. You could probably only give up 2 in this situation because the Big Ten's filled with dogs. Like the SEC, sure, yeah, it's a tough conference. The Big Ten's catching up, G. They added Oregon, UCLA. Now you obviously still have the main dogs in terms of the Sooners, Michigan, Penn State, all those natural Big Ten opponents. Is he going to kind of get lost in the mix? And if so, how much longer do you think his wick is over there in Southern Cal?
The rumblings have definitely started out there in Southern California. I know a coach that was on his staff last year that no, I'm sorry, year before last, that kind of alluded to that he doesn't know if Lane. I mean, I said Lane Kiffin. He doesn't know if Lincoln Riley is built to be at a prestigious program like a USC. He thinks he would do well at like a Group of Five school or like a Division One school like a Louisville or something of that nature. He feels that Lincoln Riley struggles as a head coach when he's under a lot of pressure. This is one of his former coaches that coached with him that told me this. And why would he say something like that? Why? What makes him feel that way? Obviously, he's been through the fire with him in those meetings and having those conversations and being around him, being able to observe him. I'll tell you this: Lincoln Riley better get the defensive side of the ball taken care of. He better start taking that side of the ball serious, and he better start implementing himself into what's going on that side because that's a part of his problem. That if you even go back to when he was at Oklahoma, yeah, they scoring all these points, but you can't stop nobody, and you can't
Yeah,
stop a nosebleed. And when you're in a conference where you got Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, bro, you got to better stop somebody. You got to better win some games 17-10, 21-14. You know, it ain't gonna always be a shootout. And so I think until he understands that he has to be a head coach that's a part of the game plan and inserting himself into what's going on both sides of the ball, I think there's going to be a common theme for him. And so I think the administration at USC, I don't I don't I don't imagine them firing him this year if he doesn't have a good year. But the next year, I can see it happening. I think they're gonna kind of let it play out. Because he's going into what his third year.
this would be his fourth because he got a ride. He arrived
You're
with
right.
BK same year.
Sure did. Going into his fourth year. Going into his fourth year. I think they'll give him another year. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I think his buyout is larger than BK's buyout.
I think it could be around 90 million.
Yeah, he got a way larger buyout than BK. And so I think they would keep him another year to make that buyout a little cheaper. And I think that's the only reason if he didn't have a good year this year, I think that's the only reason he would survive and be able to come back next year.
I think so too. That's a hell of a lot of money to be able to take. Gee, I don't care who you are. Everybody is going kick your feet up on the couch and lose your job off of that, bro. Like Coach O said, what door you want me out of, dog? I'll do a backflip out that door for 90 mil. I ain't even gonna lie to you. Last one. We'll wrap this up with this. I'm gonna say Florida State. Head coach Mike Norvell went from last season contender to fringe playoff team like that. They only scored 20 plus against an FBS team once, and it was week 1 in the loss to Georgia Tech in Dublin. 13-0 in 2023, obviously missed the college football playoff after Jordan Travis's injury. And now it's like they can't escape that shadow. I feel like the biggest reason why, I'm going to dial it back all the way to the Ole Miss comment. The portal is a coin flip. If you rely on the portal to be able to build your team, sometimes it does not work out instantly. I'm not saying it ain't going to work out at all. Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. When we think of portal, or when I think of portal, kind of get lost in the time and the speed of things. I feel like it should be instantaneous. You're getting a vet. He should be able to be plug and played. It's not always like that, though. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. This year, G, they have a top 6 portal class. I feel like if you pair that with the return in production, it's not great. I think that, in terms of where they are collectively, it's horrible. But if you look at both sides of the ball ranks, they could be in a spot where all boats rise. They can plug a couple of the holes and get back to competitive status in the ACC. You really only got a couple of teams to watch out for, Clemson being the biggest one, but I could see Florida State making some noise. However, this could be the team with the most pressure out of this entire list, just based on how last season went, plus restructuring the deal. And then there's a whole lot of signs pointing toward potentially this seed getting a little hot. What's your reaction to that?
I think we got to get Mike Norvell some grace. The injuries he dealt with last year with the quarterback that transferred from Oregon State. I think he got hurt after the fourth game of the season. He had three of his top receivers hurt. There's some injuries on the offensive line. Jalen Lucas went down. That was hard to overcome, bro. And so that's why that it looked so bad last year with Florida State. And I think people don't take into account when you dealing with those type of injuries how hard it is to overcome, especially in this day and age of college football where you don't have all that depth you used to have because of what? NIL. And so I think that was a big reason why Florida State looked so bad last year, bro. I think you can't forget about what he did the year before when he went undefeated and how they would have been in that 12-team playoff if Jordan Travis didn't get hurt. Yeah, I think we cannot forget about that. And so I think Mike Norvell is a really, really good coach. He made some changes. He fired his offensive coordinator. He fired his tight end coach. He fired his receiver coach. He made some changes on the offensive side of the ball. And I think he had to do that to show the administration that, he's not complacent and he's gonna do whatever it takes to improve his football team. And so I think Mike Norvell is fine. That athletic director and administration will be a fool to even think about firing this guy. And I don't even think he should have to go to the 12-team playoff to keep his job. I really don't. Now it does have to look a certain way. Now you can't just be going out there getting your head beaten every week, right? But if they finish the season 7-4, 6-5, something like that, don't get me wrong, they should be paying close attention to him. But I don't think he should lose his job.
Yeah, not this year. You're saying, especially because
Mm.
that 13-0 record, it was 2 years ago. You do have a lot
It
of
was it was the
departures.
year before last.
Right. And then I'm gonna add on to it. It wasn't even a 12-man. It was a 4-man. They would have got into a 4-man, which was that's the one that's even harder to get into. It so it's a tough world in college football, G. Everybody always wants to do the quick rebuilds, the win right now. What have you done for me lately? People always got that short-sighted memory. Hopefully, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State, all these teams can prove the doubters wrong. But hey,
I'm surprised you ain't put Florida in there, man. I just knew you was gonna try to throw my guy Billy Napier in the mix.
nah, I'm not gonna hate on them yet, especially because I'm worried. You do got me worried about that Florida game. You got a great point, DJ Lagway. I think that's gonna be something you got to pay
Heisman
attention
Trophy
to.
candidate. Don't forget it.
DJ Lagway is cold, G. I
I
feel
like
like
it.
everybody's glazing Lenora Sellers, bro. Pay attention to DJ because they are almost the same type of player. Plus, he's over here damn near beating Georgia.
I
I watched that whole Georgia game and I saw the entire change of not necessarily focus, but like you could tell the team is an entirely different team when he on the field. He got that it factor about him. He got that big game ability. I'll give him that. I mean,
yeah.
hey, they knocked LSU off, and I was thinking LSU would beat them by 20. So never know. Shout out Billy Napier, man. Shout out Coach Billy. All right, G. Appreciate your time. I'm gonna get out of here. Everybody, you know the drill. Live Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 12:30. Hit that subscribe button. Y'all have a good one.
Don't play.
Don't play.